Hello everyone, I am Mohammed Ali. Today I would like to present to you a topic that's dear to my heart, and it is named African Community in United States of America. The community that came from the continent of Africa for the last 20, 50 years in the United States. And the question that I am interested to ask my question and present it to you is this a double minority group? A minority in a minority group? Or what some studies have suggested, double jeopardy group. In this first presentation, I would introduce to you the history and social and health experience of African immigrants in the United States since they moved here, what they have experienced, their social and health issues. And the objectives of this presentation is to educate people about the existence of the social and health issues of the African immigrants in the US, and make sure that people understand the issue and its general importance, and generate real local concern about the issues. After that, get the issue on the local agenda. Those are the three main objectives that I would really try to get into this presentation. United States is a land of immigrants. Everyone in the United States of America, including Native Americans, they descended from immigrants. According to the US Census in 2011, there were 311 million people living in the US. So the numbers are like this. So Native Americans, they are about 9.9%, less than 1% of the population. Asians and Pacific Islanders are about 5%, and there are 12.6% whom are Black and African Americans, and Hispanics and Latino origin people are 16.3%. The rest are European or white Americans. But 311 million people in the census, the report of the census, they told us that the segment of the population in the US that is increasingly rapidly is the foreign-born population in the US, because this community, which is the new immigrants, they grew up from 9.6 million in 1970 to 40 million in 2010, and mainly they end up becoming into a Latino origin people. But there were millions of people that came from this continent, Africa, that end up into this category, which is Black and African Americans, which made this percentage of 12.6% in the US population. So that continent, when they, in the 1990s, the civil wars and the civil disobedience and turmoil that took place in Africa, thousands fled their country, and they end up every year into US. So nowadays there are millions of African-born blacks from the continent of Africa are living in US. Between 1990 to 2000, the total number of African immigrants increased 106%, and the largest area that this concentration went was Washington State, Washington D.C., New York City, Minneapolis, Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul, and Atlanta. For example, in New York City alone, Africans represent the most rapidly expanding immigrant groups. If you look into this data, which came from Journal of Immigrant of Minority Health, in 1990 there were about 50,000 or less than 50,000 African immigrants living, but 2000 to 2010 there were 250,000 African immigrants living in that city alone. So if you look into this graph, this figure shows you in Minneapolis area, this yellow bars are the Southeast Asian immigrants or refugees who used to reside in 1970s, the boat people, the Vietnamese, the Cambodian. But lately, after the 1990s, then this pink bar came into, which is the sub-Saharan African immigrants, Liberians, Sierra Leoneans, Somalis, Ethiopian, all now this area in 1979 to 2009, this pink color or sub-Saharan Africa immigrants moved in and they outpaced the other immigrant groups that are residing into Twin Cities or Minnesota state. So if you look into this statement, which is so the question here is, how did this African community get into the United States? How did they get here? So they got here as students, professionals, businessmen, and through visa immigrants, and they decided to stay. But lately, since the 1990s, millions of Africans moved to the United States through what's called refugee resettlement programs or asylum seekers because of the civil wars in Africa. So those are the main groups that moved to the United States. And in 2005, Voice of America, May 2nd, 2005, reported that currently more Africans who have arrived in the United States of America voluntarily than the total of those who were brought in as captives during the slave trade. That was the report from the Voice of America. So in 2005, there were more Africans who came voluntarily through students, professionals, businessmen, refugees, and asylees who came voluntarily than those who were brought in chains in couple maybe 16th, 17th century. And Africans, when they got here, whether they are refugees or asylees, there is an excitement upon arrival. And the evidence is a refugee from southern Sudan, Kwal Awan, who lives in Arizona, United States of America, was reported saying, "We were excited to come to United States, to America. But it was a shock when we got here. We were living a life of difficulties and did not expect the things you can do here." That is his verbal, reported from statepress.com. So all Africans, when they got here, they were so excited, and you can't believe the excitement upon when they are moving and when they are preparing themselves to move through UNHCR, IOM, International Immigration Office or organization. So there is a lot of excitement, people, when they are moving and when they got here. But the question comes, these immigrants or refugees, when they got here, they have a superior health status when compared with their native-born counterparts. Several factors account for this positive health profile that African immigrants possess at their arrivals. They are healthier compared to that immigrant. They might be malnourished, or they might have some weaknesses or physical weaknesses through that kind of chronic food shortage, but they possess a superior health status. And the factors that contribute to this good health upon arrival is one of them is the selectivity among immigrants. Selectivity, first of all, selectivity among immigrants may play an important role in the difference observed in new immigrants. Students and professionals who immigrated tend to be in much better health than those who remain in Africa, a phenomenon, normally a well-known phenomenon that's called health immigrant effect. But when we look at the majority of Africans who came as a refugee or immigrants, they undergo a health assessment before they move to United States of America, a pre-departure health screening. Whether you are going to America, US or Canada or Europe or Australia or New Zealand, you go a thorough health assessment, and you will not be allowed to enter into that country unless you pass this health screening. X-rays, all sexually transmitted diseases, parasitic and bacterial infections, viral infections, you have to be healthy. And also when they got here, the Africans, they also undergo another post-arrival health screening. And after staying 1 year in United States also, the Africans who came through refugees and asylees to get the permanent residence, you have to get a health screening done before applying it. So this community, Africans who came through refugees, they go 3 consecutive health screening in a year. So they end up becoming the healthiest person on earth after 1 year. But the question here is, United States, the Department of Health and Human Services, CDC, Center for Disease Control, they try to prevent disease importation to United States because they never trusted these groups, and they have to do, and they have to protect. That's what they do 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to prevent disease being imported, brought into United States through either refugee resettlement or any other immigrants, which is great. They did that work well, but it seems to me that CDC or anybody involved or in charge in this, they never try to prevent African immigrants from acquiring diseases in United States of America after moving in. So they planned disease importation to prevent it or protected Americans getting a disease from outside, international diseases. But when these international communities, Africans, they moved in, nobody has imagined or planned any type of disease or social and health issues that they can face and acquire from the US. That is the challenge that is facing in the United States of America immigrants and refugees. There is a host of health and social problems that African community faced. Trauma and psychological problems. Mental health issues unprecedented. Physical health problems, chronic diseases that came up after moving to the US. Drug and substance abuse, khat or shisha or etc. All these and others, those were reported in the scientific journals